He defied orders to save her. Court-martial became wedding. The Aurora spire floated in the endless black, its glassy towers reaching toward distant stars above the bustling Unity chamber. Lights glittered like a constellation locked within the ship's steel ribs, painting dignitaries in shifting rainbows as they mingled, voices rising in fractured hope and veiled threat. Agent Rowan Hale moved unseen among them, a silent figure threading through pools of laughter and wary glances. He wore the tailored midnight of a coalition attaché, but every step was measured, every shadow catalogued, his steel-blue gaze missing nothing. For over a decade, Rowan had been the coalition's invisible hand, a phantom in the corridors of power, a wraith at the edges of conflict. Now, the Unity chamber seethed with the uneasy promise of change, and tonight, his directive was chilling in its clarity. Observe, do not intervene, and allow the assassination of Envoy Lyra, the Laisari, whose words threatened to mend wounds the coalition preferred to keep bleeding. He kept to the edge of the grand hall, the crowd a blur of silks and uniforms. His earpiece hissed quietly. Spectre 5, hold position, no interference. At the hall's heart stood Lyra. Her fur, a radiant sunset orange, seemed to catch and hold every shard of light. Fox-like ears, tipped in sable, twitched atop her head, alert to every tremor of the room. She moved with the grace of someone raised amid suspicion, her dark hair flowing like a river down her back. Her eyes, wide, luminous, hopeful, scanned the assembly as she spoke. Rowan found himself listening despite himself. "Peace is not the dream of the weak," Lyra declared, voice carrying over the restless crowd. "It is the strength of those who have seen too much death. We cannot build a future atop bones." Rowan's gaze drifted to the perimeter. There, the hit squad. 3 shooters, 1 coordinator. Their credentials immaculate, movements seamless, eyes fixed with cold intent on Lyra. They moved with a predator's patience, every action calculated, unobtrusive, almost perfect. But not perfect enough. As Lyra's speech crescendoed, Rowan's chest tightened. Something inside him, a fracture he had never admitted, widened with every word she spoke. It was not her beauty, though that was undeniable. It was the conviction threading her voice, the clarity of belief he had not felt in years. The lead assassin's hand slid beneath his jacket, pulse blaster, low yield, designed for clean kills in crowded places. Lyra's ears flicked. She turned, a subtle motion that belied the sudden alertness in her posture. Rowan felt the world slow. His earpiece buzzed again, sharper this time. "Spectre 5, do not engage. Proceed as ordered." He watched the assassin raise the weapon, time fractured, stretched thin as glass. Rowan's hand moved of its own accord, drawing his own sidearm. He fired. The plasma round punched through the assassin's chest, one clean shot. The man crumpled, shock rippling through the crowd. Before panic could erupt, Rowan surged forward. The second shooter pivoted, weapon rising, but Rowan's training was absolute. He seized the attacker's wrist, twisted, fired once more. Another body hit the marble floor. Screams shattered the air. Guards shouted, some fumbling for weapons, others freezing in confusion. The third assassin, a wiry woman with shadowed eyes, lunged for Lyra. But the envoy moved with a speed that startled even Rowan. She pivoted, seized the woman's arm, and brought her down in a flurry of motion. The attacker's blaster skidded away. Lyra pressed her knee to the woman's throat, pinning her with surprising strength. "Envoy, we have to go!" Rowan called, voice cutting through the chaos. Lyra's eyes met his. In that moment she read him, saw the turmoil, the loyalty broken, the desperate resolve. She nodded, grabbed her fallen dagger, and fell in beside him. They fled through the growing panic, Rowan leading her past toppled chairs and shouting dignitaries. Every alarm blared. Security teams swarmed, but Rowan's clearance codes bought them precious seconds. They ducked through a service hatch into the labyrinthine corridors behind the chamber. Gunfire echoed somewhere behind them. Lyra kept pace, face drawn but steady. "Which way?" she demanded. "Emergency hangar," Rowan replied. "Stay close." They wove through maintenance passages and security checkpoints, Rowan overriding locks with a stolen command chip. At last, they burst into the hangar, a cavernous bay glowing with emergency lights. Rowan scanned the docking slips, spotted a diplomatic skimmer, its Lysari markings still fresh from recent arrival. He rushed to the controls, overriding the authentication protocols with a few practiced keystrokes. Lyra slid into the co-pilot's seat, blade still slick in her hand. As the bay doors parted, gunfire ripped through the gloom. Rowan slammed the throttle, and the skimmer rocketed out into the void, plasma fire lancing past their hull. Behind them, the Aurora spire receded, its lights flickering like distant ghosts. Alarms blared, tiny shapes swarming at the hangar mouth, but Rowan kept the skimmer's course erratic, diving through debris fields and scattering sensor ghosts in their wake. For long moments, neither spoke. The cockpit was cramped, the air thick with adrenaline and the tang of scorched metal. Lyra, poised but wary, kept her hand near her ceremonial dagger. Rowan checked a burn across his forearm, jaw clenched against the pain. His eyes stayed fixed on the scanner, searching for pursuit. At last, the silence broke. A news feed flickering across the skimmer's comm panel. Rowan's face filled every quadrant, his name spat with venom. Coalition traitor Rowan Hale abducts Lysari envoy. Assassins slain, martyrs to the cause. Security crisis on the Aurora Spire. Lyra's name was repeated with icy formality, each syllable twisted for maximum outrage. She turned to him, voice quiet. "You could have let them kill me. Why didn't you?" Rowan exhaled, a long breath shuddering from his chest. "Because I'm done with needless deaths. Someone has to believe in a future without inherited hatred." Lyra studied him, the hard lines of suspicion softening around her eyes. "You know what this means? We're both fugitives. My people will see me as tainted. Yours will want you dead." Rowan nodded. "We'll vanish. I know a place, out on the rim. New faces, new lives. And maybe we find out who set you up." The skimmer hurtled toward the edge of known space, engines humming with desperate hope. Before they reached the crossroads, a warren of outlaw stations beyond the Coalition's reach, Lyra turned to him, her expression open, vulnerable. "There's something you should know," she said. "I possess limited empathic senses. I felt your struggle back there. Your heart was fighting to save me, even as your training told you to let me die." Rowan stared at her, the weight of her words settling between them like a promise. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope, not just for survival, but for something more. He realized then he had found not just an ally, but a connection he hadn't expected. The crossroads was a riot of color and chaos, a neon-drenched orbital market teeming with outlaws, agents, and scavengers. Vendors hawked synth fruit and illegal augments from stalls patched together with starship scrap. Armed mercs jostled data runners, and scents of ozone, spice, and desperation mingled in the air. Rowan and Lyra moved through the tumult, unrecognizable beneath borrowed cloaks and chameleon masks. Every step was a calculation, every shadow a possible threat. Rowan's shoulders brushed Lyra's as they slipped down a spiral ramp into the submarket. She moved with a natural fluidity, reading the crowd with those vulpine eyes, her fur dulled to a coppery brown by a hollow veil. Rowan's jaw remained clenched, his gaze restless beneath the hood. Their destination was a rusted kiosk, wedged between a cyberdock's tent and a gambling den. There, Crixel waited, spindly, insectile, his body a patchwork of organic and mechanical, 6 spider-like limbs clicking softly as he worked at a battered console. A dozen holofeeds flickered overhead, each one tuned to a different sector of the crossroads. As they approached, Crixel's multifaceted eyes glinted. Well, if it isn't the infamous pair, your bounty's already up by half, he hissed, voice metallic and amused. Not many make the front page that fast. Rowan kept his voice low, steady. We need new IDs, transport, and credits. Fast. No questions. Crixel's mandibles parted in a grin. Nothing's ever simple with you, Spectre. His upper limbs danced over the console, pulling up data. You're radioactive. Every bounty hunter in the quadrant sniffing your trail. Lyra stepped forward, her diplomatic calm undiminished by the chaos. We have information. The Unity Chamber attack was orchestrated. This isn't just a power grab. Someone profits from keeping the war alive. Crixel's focus sharpened, interest flickering across his face. Interesting. Who profits, I wonder? I might know buyers for proof, or enemies who'll pay to keep it buried. We don't want to sell, Rowan cut in. We want to use it, but we need to survive first. Before Crixel could respond, the lights died. The crossroads vanished into blackness, neon signs and vendor hollows winking out in sequence. A half-beat of silence, then the pounding of boots, dozens, moving with military precision. A voice crackled over loudspeakers. Cernai trackers, all exits sealed. Remain where you are. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. Crixel's limbs tensed, all humor gone. No time. Maintenance shaft. He flicked open a hidden panel beneath his console, revealing a narrow tunnel lined with ancient wiring. This way! Move! Rowan slipped in first, pulling Lyra after him. The shaft was claustrophobic, smelling of ozone and grease. Crixel scuttled behind, sealing the entrance as shouts and weapons fire erupted above. Metal vibrated with the force of sealed blast doors slamming shut. They crawled through darkness lit only by the dim glow of Lyra's wrist beacon. Every scrape and clang from the market above echoed through the metal. Lyra closed her eyes, her brow furrowing in concentration. They're close, she whispered. The Cernai, cold, like a hunting machine. They're driving us forward. Rowan cursed under his breath. They want to flush us into a kill zone. Not if we outthink them, Crixel replied. He tapped on a side panel, popping it open to reveal a rickety ladder. There's a maintenance crawlspace leading to the outer hull. Risky, but better than a firing squad. Outer hull? Lyra asked, incredulous. Crixel nodded. With mag clamps, unless you fancy your odds with the Cernai. Rowan took point, prying open the access hatch. Freezing wind howled through the gap. Below them, the crossroads surface stretched in a patchwork of blinking hazard lights and battered plating. With Crixel's mag clamps in hand, they stepped out, gravity giving way to vertigo. Lyra gritted her teeth, following Rowan along the hull, each step a battle against the endless void. Her empathy flickered, brushing the presence of the Cernai, cold, methodical, hungry for blood. One misstep, and the crossroads would have claimed them forever. They crept past venting exhausts and sensor blisters, skirting security drones that scanned with icy blue eyes. Crixel's extra limbs gave him an uncanny ease, but Lyra and Rowan had only courage and the stubborn will to survive. There! Rowan called, voice muffled by his breather mask. Ahead was a battered courier ship, its hull scorched by ion storms, its transponder dark. Crixel, can you crack it? Crixel's claws danced over the lock. Always. Just keep those trackers off my back. Inside, the ship was a coffin, tight corridors and shadowed corners, the air stale. Rowan sealed the hatch as Crixel powered up the engines. Lyra dropped into the co-pilot's seat, fingers trembling for the first time. As the Cernai swept the hangar, the courier roared to life. Rowan gunned the engines, blasting away from the crossroads in a spray of plasma and debris. The station shrank behind them, its neon chaos receding into the distance. They didn't speak until the ship was deep in the asteroid belt, sensors clear. In the cargo hold, the adrenaline of escape bled into silence. Rowan slumped against a crate, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. Lyra joined him, her fur still bristling with the memory of danger. She reached for the medkit, her hand brushing his as she checked a gash on his forearm. "Let me," she said softly. Rowan hesitated, then allowed her to clean the wound. Her touch was gentle, her presence grounding. For a moment, the mask of agent and envoy slipped. They were just two fugitives, battered and alive. Their eyes met, longer than necessary, something unspoken passing between them. Lyra's fingers lingered, her gaze dropping to his lips before she looked away, cheeks warming. Rowan's breath hitched, the weight of everything they'd survived crashing into a new awareness. "Thank you," he murmured. Lyra smiled, the first true one since the Aurora Spire. "We're not out yet." Crixel reappeared, dropping a data stick into Rowan's palm. "Everything I could scrape. You owe me a starship or 3. Rowan nodded, pocketing the stick. "We'll settle up, eventually." Crixel vanished back toward the cockpit, muttering about impossible clients and suicidal plans. Safe for now, Rowan and Lyra huddled over the battered terminal in the cargo hold. The data Crixel had provided was a tangled web of financial records, encrypted messages, and command logs. Lyra parsed the data, her diplomatic training unpicking the coded references, while Rowan's agent's instincts traced patterns in the chaos. A pattern emerged: transactions routed through shell companies, procurement of advanced assassin tech, secret backups. One thread led to a set of live orders, routed to the assassin team during the summit. Rowan's eyes narrowed as he decrypted a final file. His name appeared, cold and clinical. "If the mission fails, Spectre 5 is to be eliminated. Authorization, Director Soren." The words hit him like a physical blow. Betrayal was not new in his line of work, but seeing his handler's signature, someone he'd trusted for years, cut deeper than any wound. Rowan's hands shook as he set the datapad aside. Lyra moved closer, her empathy reaching for the storm inside him. She took his hand, her thumb tracing gentle circles across his knuckles. "You weren't just a tool, Rowan," she said quietly. "You chose to save me, even when everything told you not to. That matters." He looked at her, searching for doubt, but found only understanding. For the first time since the chaos began, he felt the ice around his heart begin to thaw. The line between operative and envoy blurred, no longer just fugitives, but something more. Something that, in the hush between stars, took root and grew. The courier drifted in the shadow of a shattered moon, its hull lit only by the fractured glow of distant starlight filtering through the debris field. Inside, a hush had settled, tense and expectant, like the quiet before an orbital storm. Rowan and Lyra worked side by side in the cramped galley, holographic files flickering across the tabletop between them. The hum of the ship's life support was their only company as they pieced together the last clues, each revelation drawing the net tighter around them. The evidence was undeniable now, staring up from the floating displays in cold, unfeeling lines. Coalition funds routed through a lattice of shell companies, arming mercenaries and black market killers. Detailed instructions: eliminate Envoy Lyra, neutralize Spectre 5 if compromise occurs, carried the authorization code of Director Soren. Rowan's handler, Rowan's mentor, Rowan's betrayer. He stared at the data, hands clenched so tightly his knuckles blanched. 13 years I followed him, Rowan said, voice hollow. Every order, every compromise. I believed I was doing what was necessary. He was ready to discard me like a malfunctioning drone. Lyra moved closer, her presence a balm against the icy shock. She reached out, her hand resting lightly on his. "He misjudged you," she said softly, her golden eyes searching his face. "You listened to your conscience. That's what separates you from men like Soren." He turned to her, pain flickering across his features. "I thought loyalty was everything. I trained myself to doubt, to suspect, to act without question. But when it mattered, I hesitated. I broke orders. Her touch grew firmer, grounding him as the walls he had built for years began to crumble. That's not weakness, Rowan. That's strength. You found your own line in the sand. You chose not to cross it, no matter the cost. For a moment, the mission, the running, the danger, all of it faded. There was only the space between them, charged and fragile. Their hands lingered, fingers entwining with growing certainty. The glow of the hollows painted her fur in shifting colors, lighting the softness of her expression. "We should focus on the plan," Rowan murmured, forcing himself to look away. Duty warred with desire in his voice. "There's still so much to do." But Lyra shook her head, her ears flattening with gentle insistence. "The plan can wait. You're carrying too much pain, Rowan. If you don't face it, it'll destroy us, before Soren ever gets the chance." He let the words settle, the truth of them undeniable. For years he'd locked everything away behind a soldier's discipline, yet here with Lyra, his resolve unraveled. He closed his eyes and spoke, the words rough and raw. "I don't know how to stop. I keep replaying every choice I made, every life lost, every time I convinced myself it was necessary. All I ever wanted was to believe it meant something, that I meant something." Lyra shifted closer, her hand tracing the hard line of his jaw, her claws soft and careful. "You do mean something," she whispered. "Not because of the orders you followed, but because you chose to save a life when it counted most. You chose me." He looked at her, vulnerability etched deep in the lines of his face. "What if I can't be more than what I was trained to be?" She smiled, slow and sure, her empathy wrapping around him like sunlight through the gloom. "Then we change the rules. We expose Soren. We fight for what's right. And we do it together." Their faces drew close, breath mingling. The kiss that followed was inevitable, a release of fear and longing, a collision of need that left them both gasping. It was not gentle, not at first. Too much pain, too much hope compressed into a single moment. But as Rowan's arms closed around her, and Lyra pressed against him, the urgency softened into something sweeter, more patient. The past fell away, and they clung to each other as if the world beyond the ship's hull no longer existed. In the hours that followed, every touch and whispered word carried new meaning. Lyra's hands mapped the scars on Rowan's body, reading the silent story of his survival, while Rowan traced the curve of her back, memorizing the warmth of her skin beneath the soft fur. Trust grew with each heartbeat, each gentle caress, a promise spoken not in words, but in the safety they found in each other's arms. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Rowan carefully dressed a plasma burn on Lyra's shoulder, his fingers tender. She winced, then smiled as he fastened the bandage. "You're good at this," she teased softly, eyes shining. "I've had practice," he replied, lips quirking. "Field medics, mostly. Never someone I actually cared about." She leaned into his touch, her tail brushing his leg. "I trust you, not just with my life, Rowan, with everything." They lay together in the narrow bunk, close enough to feel every breath, every heartbeat. The courier ship creaked around them, but for the first time since the Unity chamber, Rowan felt truly safe, safe enough to let his guard down, if only for a little while. Lyra broke the silence, her voice thoughtful. "Where I'm from, there's a tradition. Soul pairing. It isn't a choice, it's a recognition. You meet the one who completes you, and you know, deep down, that your paths were meant to cross." Rowan turned to her, his hand finding hers beneath the thin blanket. "You believe that?" She nodded, her golden eyes luminous in the half-light. "My empathy tells me this is more than survival. When I look at you, I feel certainty, connection. I would claim you as my chosen mate, if you'd have me." The weight of her confession settled between them, profound and unbreakable. Rowan brought her hand to his lips, pressing a reverent kiss to her knuckles. I never thought I'd find this, not in the life I chose, but I want it. I want you. Lyra smiled, her ears lifting in quiet joy. Then whatever comes, we face it together. Their future remained uncertain, a tangled web of enemies, betrayal, and danger. But in that moment, hope bloomed in the darkness, bright and unwavering. It was a promise for a future beyond the mission, and together, they would fight to claim it. In the scrapyards of Halcyon Station, Rowan and Lyra picked their way through towers of rusted hulls and gutted engines, the air thick with ozone and the distant whine of plasma cutters. This was no place for the faint of heart. Here, scavengers eyed newcomers with predatory curiosity, and the security drones looked the other way. Rowan kept one hand on his sidearm, the other linked with Lyra's as they made their way to a dim alcove lit by flickering neon. At the center of the chaos lounged Cypher, the slicer they'd been promised. Half mechanical, with a cybernetic jaw and optic lenses that flickered with internal code. His spindly fingers danced across 3 hollow terminals at once, feeding data into a neural rig embedded in the back of his skull. He didn't bother to look up as they approached. "You bring the payload?" Cypher's voice was distorted, pitched somewhere between synthetic and organic. "Because I don't take charity cases." Rowan slid the encrypted shard onto the table. "Every file we have. Coalition movements, arms deals, Soren's orders. We need a broadcast that can't be scrubbed." Cypher's eyes glimmered. "You want me to hijack the tribunal feed during your little show trial?" He grinned, metal jaw creaking. "Ballsy. I like it. One catch. I keep the data after. All of it." Rowan hesitated, then nodded. "Deal. But if you cross us, I won't. My business is exposure, not allegiance." Cypher's attention flickered to Lyra, calculating. "You're the Lissari envoy. Empath. Useful. But if you fry my implants, I'll fry your brain right back." Lyra's ears flicked, but she held his gaze. "I don't threaten allies. Just finish the job." "Good. Here's the plan." Cypher projected a map of Halcyon's comm array, zooming in on relay node 44. "We get inside, jack the node, and trigger a hard stream to every tribunal channel, every public feed. Once I'm in, I'll patch the files straight over the trial." The schedule was relentless, 72 hours until Rowan's arraignment. The coalition wanted a spectacle, an execution disguised as justice. The countdown ticked louder with every moment. They spent the next day weaving through asteroid fields and forgotten maintenance tunnels, keeping low as Halcyon's security grew tighter. In the quiet between maneuvers, Rowan glanced at Lyra, unable to keep the vulnerability from his voice. "Your belief in soul pairing, it feels more real than anything I've ever known. If we make it through this, I want to learn what it truly means to be chosen by you." She smiled, the kind of smile that banished doubt. "It's not about following. It's about seeing the truth in someone's heart. I see yours, Rowan. No trial or tribunal can take that away." He squeezed her hand, and in that fragile, stolen moment, they anchored themselves to each other, 2 fugitives, hunted by a galaxy that wanted them erased. When the night cycle came, Cypher led them through the labyrinth beneath relay node 44. Pipes dripped condensation, the air charged with the hum of high-voltage lines. The node was a fortress, sheathed in armored plating and bristling with sensors. "Watch for laser grids," Cypher murmured, his voice piped through a comm bead. "The AI here is paranoid, likes to bait intruders before it roasts them." They slipped inside, shadows among shadows. Lyra's ears pivoted, catching the subsonic thrum of security drones. Her empathy swept the corridor, brushing against the cold, analytic mind of the node's defense AI. It watched, calculating probabilities of threat, unmoved by fear or mercy. "2 drones ahead," she whispered. "They're logic branches. They're waiting for a mistake." Rowan nodded, signaling for patience. They moved in sync, his training and her instincts dovetailing perfectly. Lyra leapt a tripwire, her body arcing with feline grace, while Rowan disabled a sensor with a quick pulse from his disruptor. Cypher trailed behind, muttering code under his breath. As they neared the central hub, the corridors narrowed, and the ambient hum intensified to a headache-inducing whine. A grid of crimson lasers flickered to life, shifting in unpredictable patterns. AI's adapting, Cypher warned. It knows we're here. Give me a minute to brute force the pattern. But there was no minute. The grid tightened, trapping them. Lyra's eyes scanned the ceiling, her empathy feeling the AI's spike of triumph. It's going to trigger a containment field. We have seconds. She darted forward, leaping across 3 electrified panels, her momentum carrying her over a deadly arc of energy. She landed hard, sliding beneath a lowering barrier, then yanked free a cable and jammed it into a maintenance port. Sparks danced, and the lasers stuttered, just long enough for Rowan and Cypher to lunge through. "Remind me to never play cards with you," Cypher panted, already plugging into the core's interface. In the server heart, cold blue light washed over racks of data drives. Cypher's fingers blurred across his rig, code streaming in walls of green and gold. On his cue, Rowan slotted the evidence shard, and Lyra keyed in the final authorizations. A signal rippled through the node, unstoppable, uncompromising. Tribunal feeds across the sector flickered, cutting away from judges in ceremonial garb and prosecution speeches. Soren's voice echoed through the speakers, every damning order, every whispered threat, projected for all to hear. Images followed, money trails, encrypted messages, execution directives. The conspiracy was laid bare, live, with nowhere to hide. Lyra's claws dug into Rowan's hand as they watched the chaos unfold. Across Halcyon, alarms blared. Defense systems shuddered awake. "We did it," Lyra breathed, a mixture of hope and dread in her voice. Cypher snapped his neural rig free. "Broadcasts out, but we're out of time. Defense drones inbound, and the nodes got teeth." Turrets whirred to life as blast doors sealed with a thunderous clang. Rowan drew his blaster. Lyra unsheathed her dagger. Drones poured from wall hatches, sleek, lethal, single-minded. They fought side by side, moving as one. Rowan's blaster sent sparks flying, dropping a drone with each shot. Lyra's movements were a blur of speed and precision, her empathy warning Rowan moments before each attack. A turret swiveled toward them. Lyra hurled a tool into its sensor array, disabling it with a sizzle of sparks. Cypher worked furiously at the console. "Almost got you a back door. Just hold." He ducked as a stray round scorched the terminal above his head. Rowan gritted his teeth, pressing his back to Lyra's. "No matter what happens, I wouldn't change this. You're my choice, Lyra." She reached for his hand, their fingers interlacing tightly. "We are more than what they made us. Together, we are truth." The defenses closed in, the node shuddering under the assault. Lights flickered as the AI tried to reassert control. Rowan and Lyra fought on, every heartbeat a defiance of the future Soren had written for them. As the last drone fell, the blast doors sealed. They stood together in the heart of the storm, hands clasped, eyes steady, united by love and resolve, ready to face whatever the next dawn might bring. Across the stars, the broadcast shattered illusions. On every coalition world, in every city and outpost where people gathered around tribunal feeds, the truth unfurled in all its damning clarity. Soren's face and voice, once trusted, once feared, now exposed, replayed over and over with each order, each transaction, each life sacrificed for profit. There was no room left for denial. Commander Isolde, stern and silver-haired, presided over the tribunal, her expression darkening with every revelation. She saw not just Soren's greed, but the rot threatening to spread through the coalition's highest echelons. The moment the transmission ended, Isolde stood. Her voice rang out, sharp, decisive, carrying authority that none in the chamber dared challenge. Security. Prepare immediate rescue teams. Detain Director Soren at once. Priority. Save agents Hale and Envoy Lyra. All other directives are rescinded. The tribunal is suspended until their safe return. On Halcyon Station, the order was more than a command. It was a spark that set the Marines into motion. Dropships burst from hangars, cutting through debris toward Node 44. Inside, Rowan and Lyra's fight had become a desperate ballet of survival. Server racks lay toppled, glowing with spilled code and burning circuitry. Drones swarmed, wings whirring, optics pulsing red as they scanned for targets. Rowan and Lyra moved as one. He fired with cool precision, dropping drones before they could flank them, while Lyra's empathy flared, warning of ambushes and traps before metal claws could strike. Her senses gave them precious seconds, turning certain death into narrow escape. A turret whined overhead. Rowan rolled behind cover, firing a shot that blew the sensor off its mount. Lyra launched herself up, claws scoring a drone that had slipped past Rowan's defenses. Sparks rained, acrid and bright, as the drone crashed beside them. "We need to move, now," Rowan called, eyes darting to the flickering schematic Cypher had left on his wrist display. "Hangars 2 corridors east." Lyra nodded, eyes narrowed, her fur singed but her resolve unbroken. "I feel them. Soren's people are waiting for us. 5, no, 6 mines, cold and focused." They slipped through a side passage, Rowan's tactical training carving a path through the labyrinth. Every door was a choke point, every open stretch a gauntlet. Twice, Lyra yanked him back just as a drone rounded the corner, her senses saving them from certain death. At last, the hangar doors loomed ahead, their surface pitted from years of neglect. But before they could reach it, the familiar insignia of Soren's personal guard glinted in the half-light, armored forms blocking the exit. At their head stood Captain Dax, Soren's right hand, broad-shouldered, with cold eyes that promised no mercy. Dax's weapon was trained on Rowan before the doors had finished opening. "Spectre 5, Envoy, this is your end. Surrender, and I'll make it quick." Rowan glanced at Lyra, reading the trust in her gaze. He shifted his stance, refusing to yield. "You're on the wrong side, Dax. The truth is out. Your loyalty to Soren dies today." Dax's finger tightened on the trigger. Truth is a luxury for the dead. But before the killing blow could fall, chaos erupted. The outer blast doors shrieked open, and Coalition Marines stormed the bay in a flood of armored bodies, stun rifles and shields at the ready. Shouts echoed, "Stand down! Drop your weapons!" as grenades hissed and smoke rolled over the polished floor. Soren's guards fired in desperation. Rowan returned fire, dropping to one knee, covering Lyra as she dove for a fallen Marine's shield. Dax fought like a man possessed, his weapon blazing, but one by one his squad fell, stunned, not killed. The Marines closed in, overwhelming the traitors with sheer force. As the last guard fell, Dax raised his pistol for a final shot, hatred twisting his face. He fired, and Rowan felt the burn as the round tore through his side. He staggered, knees buckling. Lyra caught him before he could fall, her arms strong around his waist. Blood welled between her fingers as she pressed against the wound, her own body shielding him from further harm. Marines swept past them, securing the scene and restraining the last of Soren's loyalists. Rowan's vision blurred, pain and adrenaline mixing into a dizzying haze. He tried to stand, but the world tilted. The last thing he saw before the darkness closed in was Lyra. Her eyes fierce, her stance protective, daring anyone to come near. He drifted in and out of consciousness, the sounds of medics and orders muffled, the bright lights of the hangar fading into quiet. A week later, the tribunal chamber looked nothing like the courtroom that had once been set for his execution. The air was clear, dignitaries hushed, and Commander Isolde presided not with suspicion, but with the solemnity of a reckoning. Rowan stood tall at the defendant's podium, his uniform pressed, and the wound at his side a dull ache beneath the dressings. Lyra stood with him, her fur brushed to a golden sheen, her presence a beacon of support. Commander Isolde's gaze swept the assembled council before falling on Rowan. Rowan Hale, you stand accused of high treason. The evidence is clear. Your actions directly contravened orders, but in doing so, you exposed a cancer at the heart of our coalition. You risked everything for the truth, and for that, you have changed the fate of countless lives. Rowan met her eyes, unflinching. I would do it again. No command is worth more than conscience. A ripple moved through the chamber. Respect, not condemnation. Isolde nodded once. Then this tribunal finds you guilty as charged, but in recognition of your service and the greater good achieved by your defiance, you are granted a full pardon and an honorable release. You are a free man, Mr. Hale. What you do now is your own choice. The galaxy needs those who choose their conscience. Relief crashed through him, followed by the dizzying weight of freedom. Lyra's hand found his, her fingers warm and steady. A free life suits you, she whispered, her voice bright with hope and joy. He squeezed her hand, a quiet smile breaking through the gravity of the moment. It's a beginning, he replied, his heart full, for the first time, not with duty or regret, but with possibility. 2 months later, the Aurora Spire Gardens shimmered with crystal and light, transformed from a scene of violence into a sanctuary of hope. The air was fragrant with blooming star orchids and Lisari sky roses, their petals catching the glow of refracted sunlight from the domed glass overhead. Where once Rowan had moved unseen, a specter among the shadows, now he stood visible in the open, awaiting a moment he had never dared to imagine. Rowan and Lyra's wedding was small, but each guest carried the weight of history. Friends gathered in gentle laughter, some from the old life, survivors of the tribunal's storm, others new, found on the rim and in the aftermath. Commander Isolde, dressed in ceremonial navy, stood at Rowan's side as guest of honor. Her presence was a silent benediction, a recognition that peace, hard won, could also be beautiful. The Lisari delegation gathered under a crystal arch, their fur brushed and ears adorned with delicate chains. Among them stood elders who had once branded Lyra tainted, now watching with cautious pride as their envoy prepared to unite not just 2 lives, but 2 worlds. Near the altar, a silver drone hovered, its optics whirring. Cypher's voice crackled from a concealed speaker. Rowan, Lyra, music's on me, try not to trip the alarms. And congratulations, you magnificent troublemakers! As if in answer, the drone shifted the melody to a Lysari folk tune spliced with old earth chords, a whimsical touch that brought a smile even to Isolde's stoic face. Lyra stood radiant in flowing silver and orange silk, the fabric shifting like fire and moonlight as she moved. Tiny bells dangled from her fox-like ears, chiming softly with every breath. Her dark hair had been braided with strands of starlight and blossoms, framing the glow of her golden eyes. She looked both regal and unguarded, her empathy rippling through the guests, sharing warmth and serenity. Rowan's civilian suit was a dark tailored cut that felt lighter than any uniform he had ever worn. He wore no insignia, only a simple Lisari pendant, a gift from Lyra, resting over his heart. He felt exposed, but not vulnerable. Instead, he felt seen. Among those who mattered, that was enough. The ceremony blended human and Lisari traditions, words of promise spoken beneath a canopy woven from both cultures. Lyra's people chanted blessings for union and truth. Rowan's friends offered toasts for courage and joy. A Lysari elder anointed their hands with scented oil, while Isolde presented them with a binding sash, a coalition token now repurposed as a symbol of hope. When the moment came, Rowan faced Lyra, his hands steady as he drew her close. "I lived in the shadows, a ghost," he began, voice carrying through the gathered crowd. "Then I saw you, a light in the darkness. Saving you wasn't a choice. You are my compass, my hope, my home." His words were simple, but every syllable landed with the weight of all they had endured. There was no need for grand declarations. The truth was enough. Lyra's golden eyes shone with tears, her empathy gently weaving through the onlookers, allowing them all to feel the intensity of her love. "My people believe in soul pairing, a missing piece found. I never understood until I felt your heart cry out to save me. You are not a weapon. You are a protector. I claim you as my soul pair, my chosen mate, my husband." She pressed his hand to her cheek, letting the bells in her hair sing. The crowd seemed to hold its collective breath, the barriers between human and Lisari melting away with every heartfelt vow. Isolde stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "In the presence of friends, allies, and the promise of peace, I recognize your union. May your bond inspire this new era." Rowan and Lyra's hands clasped, a single entity before the galaxy. The Lysari delegation sang a wordless refrain, ancient and mournful, swelling into celebration. Cypher's drones circled overhead, capturing the moment for every screen from the rim to the heart of the coalition. Rowan looked into Lyra's eyes, seeing not just the envoy who had changed his world, but the woman who had saved his soul. Their kiss was soft at first, then deepened, an exchange of trust and longing, witnessed by a room that knew too well the price of peace. It was a promise, not just to each other, but to the future. When they finally parted, the garden erupted in applause and joyful cries. Lyra's bells rang out, laughter mingling with the music as guests embraced, danced, and toasted to a union that had once seemed impossible. Galactic news feeds scrolled across every screen. From Outlaw to I Do, Human Agent and Lysari Envoy unite for a new era. Holojournalists broadcast images of the ceremony, focusing not on the pageantry, but on the unity that radiated from the couple at its heart. Where once Rowan's name had meant scandal and treason, now it was a symbol of redemption. Where Lyra had been exile and envoy, now she was bridge and beloved. The trial had become a wedding, and for two souls from distant worlds, peace had finally, unforgettably, begun. That's the end of the story. You can leave us a tip or become a channel member. This greatly helps our team improve the quality of our videos. You can send a tip using the Super Thanks button right below the video. We truly appreciate each and every one of you who has subscribed and supported us. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video!